What terrifying confession has someone told you while intoxicated? My brother was drunk and he told me how he got sexually assaulted by our half-brother when he was 8, and that he knew that our half-brother assaulted me too when I was 5. My mom told me she wished she aborted me when I was 8 or 9 or so. She's doing better now after a long struggle with alcoholism. Our relationship is much better, and when I told her this a few months ago she hugged me tightly and keeps apologizing to this day. Ages back I was helping a blackout drunk co-worker to his apartment etc. He was needing to be carried 1 second and sprinting across the parking lot the next. As we're getting close to his room he starts breaking down. Why did I hit him? I shouldn't have run etc. Turns out drunk Diego is pretty convinced he hit a kid with his car one day. Sober Diego has no idea what he was talking about. One time, an old acquaintance and I were drinking late into the night. She drank much faster than me, and before long randomly and drunkenly confessed to me the following. When her aging and sick mother, whom she despised and was a ton of unappreciated work to care for, was left in her care, she intentionally withheld certain medications and gave her too much of other ones, with the plan being to kill her off. It worked. She told her other siblings that the illness must have finally gotten to her and she passed in her sleep. Since she was already old and sick there was no autopsy. A minute later she snapped out of it and apologized profusely for telling me that, adding that I am the only person she has ever told. I scolded a drunk girl because she was trying to shoot up in the bathroom of a strip club. At first, I was pissed because there was blood on the toilet seat. She started crying, and said it's not my fault, my dad's been shooting me up since I was 10. It was freaking sad and I felt horrible for yelling at her. Was chilling with an older dude with whom I recently started working as a butcher in a grocery store. A couple of beers down and he starts telling me he's been in prison for 17 years. Came out 2 years ago and it's his first ever job at 64 years old. I got curious and asked him what happened if it wasn't too private. Without hesitation, he simply answered, I cut him down with an axe, this piece of SH, and now he's a butcher. Dude must really like his job, I guess. Lamau. A friend of mine likes to drink a lot, but he knows he has a limit because when he goes over it he becomes very talkative. He also doesn't date at all, and for a long time we all wondered why. He's a good-looking guy, he's really nice, he's fun to be around, never wants to date. Well, one time he got absolutely shit-faced and I found out why. It turns out that when we was a kid, he saw his aunt murder his uncle in cold blood. Ever since, he's been terrified of being alone with a woman and feels like he could never truly be safe around them. Was out drinking with some colleagues at a conference. We'd been at a club dancing, and we were on the way back to the place we were staying. We were chatting about something, I think maybe guys not taking no for an answer, and one of the guys said I maybe raped someone once. Worst part is the guy was one of a pair of identical twins and I'm not totally sure which one he was. I had a friend who told me that his girlfriend dumped him because they got into a huge fight when they were drunk and she was convinced he threatened her with physical violence. He said he was saying things out of frustration like and all that, but he was sitting the whole time and she was the one that was yelling and screaming. Weird, but okay. A few weeks later, I meet him up for drinks and he is absolutely plastered. I walk him back to his place with one of his friends. As we're walking he starts crying and says that he fucked up and that he is a terrible person. We asked him to elaborate and he tells us that his ex left because he threw her into a mirror and then flipped a coffee table at her. Kept my distance after that. I had a colleague tell me 20 drinks in she was not only suicidal, but that she had unsuppressed HIV and was knowingly transmitting it to partners she was sleeping with and not telling them because she didn't care about people. I'm an HIV case manager, so this was absolutely horrific for me. My ex in college told me once when he was blackout drunk that a few years prior, him and a bunch of other kids broke into a house to have a party. The family that lived there was on vacation or something and were all gone. I'd how they picked the house or knew it'd be empty. Sorry, it's been like 12 years, and I forgot some details. They all got drunk and someone decided it would be fun to break a picture on the wall. Then someone else did, too. Eventually it devolved into them all destroying the house. Absolutely everything they could. All the windows were broken. Broke the legs off all the chairs and used them to beat holes into the walls. Ripped and stole clothing. Ripped or burnt all the family photos on the walls and dish. I don't remember all the stuff he said that they broke, but I remember him crying and saying that they ruined those people's lives and there's no way to make it right. I honestly think he was so fucked up that he doesn't remember telling me, because we never mentioned it again. Anyway, like 2 years later, he punched me in the face for asking for a ride to work one too many times, so I guess he was a piece of ish regardless of current situation or alcohol intake. A group of local kids did this to my grandparents' cottage. My grandparents weren't wealthy, just grew up when the average family could afford a cottage home up the state along the water. They broke in and stole stuff, had parties over the course of several weeks. During one of their parties a fire got out of control. The kids burned the place down. We lost everything. Every item tied to memories, all gone. These kids, now young men, one serving jail time for repeated burglaries, also would shoot fish in barrels and killed a litter of kittens by torturing them to death. My cousins and I growing up there on weekends were encouraged to play with them. We had to explain over and over again they were not good people and they scared the shit out of all 5 of us. Then they burned our place down years later. Full circle, I guess. We were talking about Al Franken and they said something along the lines of all guys fondle girls when they are sleeping. I used to touch my sister all the time. You could have heard a pin drop. We're no longer friends. Had a former friend tell me he killed his brother. Didn't help. This was while we were trying to herd his drunk ass to the car as he was crying and yelling it at the top of his lungs. Amazing we didn't end up in cuffs or the very least get stopped and questioned. Come to find out his brother died of a brain aneurysm and that morning he prayed for something to happen to get him out of school that day. He always blamed himself for his brother's death and I get that to a degree. Freshman year of college, among all the new friends I made that year, there was one guy who was always a goofball, very laid back, casual, down for whatever. The biggest red flag we got from him was that whenever people were drinking and hanging out, he would always essentially black out. He drank way too much and would kind of spaghetti noodle his way around the party, while also intoxicated. After the party had winded down one night, a few people and I asked him why he always goes so damn hard. While drooping his head a ton, sloshing around, and slurring everything, he told us about how a few months ago, his best friend called him. They lived in a small town by the beach, and his friend asked him to come meet him to watch the sunset by the water. He biked over there, sat down, and they talked for a while. Everything seemed fine. Then his friend took out a pistol and shot himself in the head, killing himself instantly. Apparently my friend had to call the police while covered in blood, brains, and skull fragments, just totally in shock. And then a few weeks later he went off to college a few states away, still in shock and unable to sleep or focus on anything. He didn't remember telling us that story, and I don't think any of us wanted to bring it up. His drinking habits didn't change until he was about to graduate, by which point he started going to therapy, got a job right after graduation, and seems to be doing better in the years since. An old coworker of mine told me about how him and his friends killed a guy in the 80s who raped one of their sisters. He wasn't even drunk. He said they pulled up to his trailer out in the desert, honked the horn, and when the guy came out about 6 guys all opened fire on him. He said that way no one knew exactly who killed him,